Josh. It is an honor to be here. I am so excited to be able to participate in this series, Parenting Through Proverbs. I believe that my parenting style was the inspiration for the hashtag #NoPerfectParents, and so it is a privilege to be up here. But when I say it's a privilege, I mean it is a privilege because I have three great children. They are ages 16, 13, and 11. And so as we look this week at that frame of years, that type or that part of life, it is something that I am experienced with. It is not something I am through. It is not something I have conquered or become incredibly good at, but it is something that I can speak to from experience. And when I say I can speak to that, I've learned a couple of things about parenting. All right, the first thing about parenting is that parenting can be fun. You can have a lot of fun with children that you cannot have without children. Parents will laugh at your stupid jokes. My kids know that I am a lover of terrible puns. And so on the way to school each day, if there's a way for me to work in a terrible pun, I'm going to do it. And they're kind of grouchy. They're not quite awake yet. And for the most part, they're just annoyed by it. But every once in a while, I can get them to laugh. And even rarer than that, I can get one of them to offer their own terrible pun. And eventually we may end up all laughing, and it can be a lot of fun to be a father. The other thing I've learned is that parenting is hard. And it requires some innovation to be successful or somewhat successful as a parent. And while I was doing some research for this week of teaching, I found another parent. He's a guy that has some teenage children, and he has kind of an innovative approach to parenting for a little bit. And so I would like for you to check out this video. This man has found a way to combine lessons he wants to teach his children and music. So if you would, please watch Parenting Songs.
See, I think guys like rock stars and stuff, they're going to have kids, man. I think James Blunt will have kids, like a daughter. And one day I think he'll suffer like me with overprotective dad syndrome. He might write this. You're not too brilliant. You're not too brilliant. You're not so bright. Saw you with my daughter just last night. You were hanging out at Subway. You were holding hands. Let me talk slowly, boy, so you'll understand. You imbecile. You imbecile. You're an imbecile. It's true. Stay away from my angel, you spawn of hell. Only when I'm dead and blue will I let her be with you.
Oh, how about Beyonce? Open minds, California, open minds. She'll have kids, she'll be like, to the left, to the left. To the left, to the left. Everything you own in a box to the left. You must not know about me. You must not know about me. I can make another you in a minute. Did you roll your eyes at me? No, you didn't. I think finally I would love to see like a Bono from U2 had kids. I would love it. I think it would go something like this. Hear the car out in the drive, see us all waiting outside, and we wait for you. going to the store. We've waited long, we won't wait more. And we'll leave without you. Leaving without you. Leaving without you. Oh, we will leave with or without you. Let's go. 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 Living without you.
It is certainly an innovative approach to parenting, and the video is kind of funny. My other option was to actually try to do that myself, and I knew my kids would be here and they would leave. So I decided I would let the video do that. Incredibly insightful. But I do, before we jump into the coaching years, I want to talk just briefly and remind us kind of where we've been. In ages 1 through 5, we really see that those are the discipline years. Those are the years when your children have to realize that they are not the center of the world, that they are a little yurtle. They are just one of many, and while they are beautiful and one of a kind, they are not the center of the world. And so our discipline is incredibly important in those early years. Ages 6 to 11, that is where there are responsibilities now. A student or a child learns that they have to do their part, that they have to make a choice and then stick to that choice, pick and stick. And today we're going to talk about coaching, and then next week we're going to talk about when your kids get 18 or older and they're in or out of the house, depending on the stage of life, and that's more of a partnership, an advisor role for the parent. And then week 6 we're going to end up with parenting prodigals, and I hope that you will be here for all of the weeks. But as we think about coaching, we see that our style of parenting changes as our kids get older. You see, as a coach, and I've coached before, I've coached a couple different sports, basketball, football on some different levels, and as a coach, they do not allow you to take the field. You see, you have to send your team out on the field. And as your kids become older, as they get to this age, 12 to 18, you realize they're going to be out there, and no longer can you make every decision for them, and no longer can you be there every moment of their life. And so now you have this coaching role. And as a coach, you're still interested in training them because you know that they need some skill development. You're still interested in seeing how they work as part of a team because they're going to have to be around other people for the rest of their lives. And so coaching becomes incredibly important, but we realize that now they're going to have to take a leadership role in their own lives. And so there's one key phrase that I really want to hone in on today as we look at the coaching years. And that key phrase is this: in this culture that encourages self-indulgence, exercise self-restraint. I'll say it again. In a culture that encourages self-indulgence, exercise self-restraint. You see, we live in a world that tells us that we really should be able to indulge in just about anything we want. If we see something that we would like, the fact that we do not have money should not stop us from having it. If we see a person outside of our marriage that we may feel meets our needs a little better, then we shouldn't stop simply because of a promise that we made. And so a lifestyle of indulgence, it's pushed on our kids as well. You need the newest phone. You need to be able to have the newest form of social media. Everything, indulge yourself. Whatever makes you feel better, do it. Whatever makes you happy, go for it. And in a culture of self-indulgence, we have to teach our kids the value of exercising self-restraint. Proverbs has been where we have been for most of this series, and King David would have talked to Solomon. He would have known that Solomon had the potential to be a king one day, and Solomon actually penned down a lot of the things that he wanted his sons to know as well. And we're going to hone in for the next few minutes on one verse, Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28. And it really shows us a portrait of what self-control or self-restraint looks like. Proverbs 25:28 says, "A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls." Now that seems kind of strange. It doesn't really apply to our current culture. If you've ever been to Jacksonville's borders, which are incredibly far from one another, there are no walls as you drive into Jacksonville. But back in Old Testament times, walls were incredibly important. And this verse is bigger than just talking about a city. It's talking about our lives. This city is compared to our life. And without self-control, our life basically has no borders. It has no walls. It has no boundaries. Let's look at another version that sheds a little more light. Proverbs 25:28 in Young's literal translation says, "A city broken down without walls is a man without restraint over his spirit." Your spirit, those things that you want to do, those things that are important to you, if there's no restraint on that, you're like a city with the walls broken down. You see, in the Old Testament, walls offered protection. When we think of someone who lives inside of walls now, what do we think of? Prison. Well, they didn't offer prison, they offered protection. A lot of times these walls were so massive that people would actually build houses into the walls. And if the wall fell down, you and your family would be crushed. Walls were incredibly important in the Old Testament. There's another thing about the walls, the protection that they offered. There's another version here that I'd like to read for you. In the Living Bible, it says, "A man without self-control is as defenseless as a city with broken down walls." You see, defenseless, the idea that an intruder can come in because the walls aren't built, because I live in a city without walls, any intruder can come in. And without self-restraint in our lives and in the lives of our kids, any intruder, the intruder of popularity, the intruder of pride, the intruder of pleasure, they can all come in and just wreak havoc in our lives, in the lives of our teens. The idea of walls is a little strange to us still, though, so I want to show you one more translation. This is the Message version, and it says this: "A person without self-control is like a house with its doors and windows knocked out." Did any of you go to bed last night with all of your windows open and your doors open? No one? Why not? Well, first of all, there are mosquitoes. Are you crazy? It's Florida. No, we don't go to bed with our windows open. The idea of moving into a house, have any of you bought a house in the last 10 years? And high on the list, number one on the list, was one without windows and doors? No, you don't do that. You're like, you'd be crazy to buy a house without windows and doors. Because it's protection, it's shelter, it keeps out people that would want to cause harm to my family. You would be insane to want a house without windows and doors. Yet, living without self-restraint, without self-control is exactly what that is like. And so, through the coaching years, we are going to want to focus on the importance of teaching self-control. And as I think about coaching, as a coach, I want my team to win. And as a father, I want my kids to win. But winning does not come without a cost. It comes at a cost of discipline. You have to practice. You have to put yourself in scenarios that might happen in the game so that those scenarios, you'll know what to do in the game. And in life, you've got to talk with your kids about things that they might encounter so that they understand what they're going to do when they encounter those things. As a coach, you can't go on the field, but you're going to do everything you can to put your players in a position to win when they are in the game. And that is what we need to do with self-restraint. We have got to teach our children to exercise self-restraint because we're not going to be in the game with them forever. And so it is important, and there are 3 specific reasons that self-restraint becomes important. The first one is so that they can see things as they are. Your teenage children, your 12 to 18-year-old children, need to understand how things really are. To imagine what could be, they need to have a dream, a vision. They need to be excited about the future. And they need to know to do what should be. They need to be someone who has credibility that in a certain situation where there's a right thing and a wrong thing, they're going to make the right decision. And so we're going to drill into these, and we're going to unpack them one at a time. And in order to do that, I wanted to kind of re-go over the first page of the story. You see this book, and to think I saw it on Mulberry Street, they read it for you. And it actually has some great insight when it comes to this idea of self-restraint. And so I'm going to read the first page here. And it says this: "When I leave home to walk to school, Dad always says to me, 'Marco, keep your eyelids up and see what you can see.' But when I tell him where I've been and what I think I've seen, he looks at me and sternly says, 'Your eyesight's much too keen. Stop telling such outlandish tales. Stop turning minnows into whales.'" When you look around the world, when your children look around the world, what do they see? We live in a culture that loves to make minnows out of whales and whales out of minnows. Small things become really big, and big things, things that are incredibly important, get minimized and become really small. And this distorts life. When we don't understand how things really, the really important things and the things that are not really important, this distorts life, and they're kind of left in this, they're going to be making decisions, and they're left with, which way should I go? Because is this really important, or is this not important? And as a parent, self-restraint will allow your child to have a sense of what is important and what is not important. To be a little more candid with it, okay, rather than minnows and whales, we could say it this way: stupid things seem smart, and smart things are made to seem stupid. Let me give you some examples. There are some incredible temptations that your teenage child is going to face. Drugs. Okay? Drugs do not seem like an incredibly smart way to go as parents. Hopefully you feel that way. Whether you've had experience with them or not, drugs don't seem like an incredibly smart way to go. Yet when you work with teenage children, there are going to be opportunities, despite everything that you do, for your child to be faced with the idea that they could do something that would allow them to get a high or feel included. And most of the kids look at that, and if your kid were to say no, they would look at their kid like, "What are you? Some kind of goody-goody? Are you too good to hang out with us? Are you too good to, fit in with everybody else and do what everybody else is doing?" Drugs are one of those things that are a huge thing, and yet they seem so commonplace. There's all kinds of articles about people who think everything's okay, and there's a lot of ways for our students or our kids to get confused by this. Another thing, pornography. It's everywhere. In your pocket, you have a device where you could access pornography in less than 30 seconds. Your children have many of those devices as well. And it's become so commonplace. I actually did a study, and they found that 28,000 unique people are looking at porn every second. Every second. So in the last 5 seconds, that's 28 times 5. Okay, I'm not great at math, but that's 140,000 unique people who looked at porn. That is the scale of the issue of pornography. And it's become so commonplace that there's almost an expectation of, why haven't you looked at this? Why don't you know about this video that's X-rated, or this video of the latest celebrity? And it's become so common that porn has become something almost insignificant. As a matter of fact, there is a study of Gen Xers, that's people, 20 to 30-ish, and they actually found that Gen Xers believe it is more immoral to not recycle than it is to look at porn. The majority of them. And so that is filtered down to our children, Because if we as parents can't figure out what's important and what's unimportant, our children are going to struggle with the exact same thing. And this shift in morality is something that we as a parent have to step in front of. And through Scripture and prayer and wisdom, we have to show our children that there are some things you are going to have to say no to, or it is going to negatively affect the rest of your life. To the teens in the room, you're going to find yourself in situations where there is no parent around. You're going to be online with no accountability. You're going to be at a friend's house who maybe you thought was a great friend, and they're going to be offered alcohol or offered some kind of drug. And to be honest with you, some of you may have parents and you've not seen a whole lot of self-restraint in their life, and they may be the reason you're even in that situation because of the people they let you associate with. And at the same time, you are of the age now where you can make a choice to say no. And know that those things that have been made to seem small and insignificant are incredibly important. They're not minnows. It's your morality, it's your health, it's your well-being, it is your spiritual connection and your future. Those things are becoming minnows. Well, not only are really important things being made small, or really really important things being made small, but we also have the idea that important things are becoming minimized. And so we see the idea that God, the very idea of God, has become something that's been minimized by our culture, to the point where most of our children are educated to believe that God did not play a role in our existence and the earth coming into existence. And if you don't have to believe that God played a role in earth coming into existence, well, you don't have to believe that you're in any way accountable to Him. And so they're taught a science that espouses the idea that, millions and millions of years ago, something blew up, and now we're all here. I'm not sure where the something came from, and I've not yet found someone who answers that question for me, but something blew up, and now we're all here in these really precise, organized collections of molecules and DNA. It actually takes more faith to believe that something blew up and we're all here than it does to believe that there was an intelligent designer, a supreme authority, a God who designed everything perfectly as it should be. Yet we're taught that God is kind of optional. If you want to believe in God or have your own religion, that's great. And if you are someone who has a religion, if you're a Hindu or a Muslim or a Mormon or whatever it might be, we're going to be respectful of you. And we're going to allow you to have your belief system, and we're not going to criticize that. But if you speak up and you say, I'm a follower of Jesus, I am a Christian, it has come to the point where you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed. You will be told that you need to keep that to yourself. God has become one of those whales, one of the biggest thing, the most overarching principle in all of the world is that God created the world and redeemed the world when He sent His Son Jesus to this earth. And that has become minimized to the point where we have more atheists or people who claim to be atheists, more agnostics than we've ever had before. And in Romans, we see exactly what God has to say about people who perpetuate this lie that He is not in existence. It says this in Romans 1:18. But God shows His anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because He made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was recreated, people have seen the earth and the sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. And as a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. Instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshipped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. What a powerful description of our current society. And so our students need to exercise self-restraint so that they can see reality. They can see what is important and what is not important. They also need to exercise self-restraint to imagine what could be. You see, we need to envision possibilities for our kids. Our kids are going to get discouraged. They are going to be told that they have little value unless they fit into a certain group or do certain things. They're going to be talked down to because they are young. They're going to be discouraged because they do talk about God or want to live for God or claim to have a relationship with Jesus. And as a parent, you are the primary encourager in the life of your child. On the front of this book, it's hard for you to see, but it says, the very first children's book by Dr. Seuss. See, Dr. Seuss had a vision that he wanted to be a children's writer. So he wrote this book, and he went to a publisher, and he got to the first publisher, and they looked at it, and they said, no thanks. And then he went to the second publisher, and they looked at it, and they said, no thanks. Then he went to the third publisher, and they looked at it, and they said, no thanks. And the fourth, and the fifth, and the 10th, and the 15th, and the 20th, and the 25th, the 26th. And then on the 27th attempt to get this book published, Dr. Seuss saw his vision become reality. Your children are going to face discouragement. They're going to feel that you are against them at times. That's a natural part of trying to guide them and coach them. They're going to feel that their friends have forsaken them at times, and you've got to be the encourager. You've got to point out that God has an incredible plan for them. And teens, if you are not encouraged by your parents, I want you to know today that your Heavenly Father has an incredible plan for you. You see, not all parents are perfect, but our Heavenly Father is. And He designed you with a purpose. And if you haven't heard that before today, know that God is for you. That He has given you the talents and abilities that you have and put you in the family that you are in and still has an incredible plan for you. You must imagine the possibilities for your children. Finally, exercising self-restraint will allow our children to do what they should do, or to do what should be. You see, at the end of this book, we see our character, Marco. He gets to the end of the book, and he has just imagined this incredible, exciting event. And he has imagined that, this is going to end with the flourish. Dad will be overwhelmed by what happened. But at the end, he tells the truth. He said, Dad, there was just a horse and a wagon. And some people will say, well, that's Dr. Seuss saying that parents crush kids' dreams. Well, that's one way to look at it. All right, I'm not a literary critic. But it also comes back to the idea that when Dad asked him, what did you really see? There was something that should be. He should tell his father exactly what occurred on Mulberry Street. And you see, there is a right and a wrong thing to be or to do. And we learn this even as little kids. And I've got a very short video clip. I want you to watch intently because it's only about 10 seconds long. But it kind of reflects the fact that we learn at an early age what we should and should not be or do. Go right ahead. All right. In case you didn't get it, this is a little, probably year and a half old. He has found a bag of Oreos. I don't think they were probably left on the floor in his room. He has managed to climb, probably with some chairs or something, some kind of, and find this bag of Oreos. He does understand that he is not allowed to just fill himself up with Oreos because when the parent walks in or the video camera comes on, he immediately puts them under his bed. He doesn't even really hurry. He's just kind of like, nothing to see here, smoothing the blanket. There's nothing going on that's in any way wrong. Do not be concerned. Watch it again, just one more time. It's very quick. Yeah. Now, I'll be honest. I'm not going to criticize the kid because I've hidden a few cookies in my room. We all have areas we like to indulge. Oreos might be on that list for me or maybe some other people. But when we think about that, the idea that the kid knew that it was the wrong thing for him to do and he had to cover that up. We all have a tendency at times to indulge in things that we should not. And it begs the question, and this is a pretty serious question, what is going on in your life when nobody is looking? And this is for every age. What is going on in your life when nobody is looking? Because that is the indulgence. If there is something there that does not line up with God's plan for your life, that is an area of self-control where you need help. And we all have those kinds of things. And so after contemplating that, I'm going to leave you with three things here where you can kind of help your children exercise some self-control. As they get older, these are things that you can kind of hand to them and say, you be the leader in your own life. And I'll do this quickly so that we can be done. The first thing is teens, young kids, or not young kids, but 12 to 18, you should learn to control your time. All right? We should start handing off some responsibility for time to our kids. All right? They should be able to get out of bed. They should be able to get some breakfast. You know, if you're still making breakfast for your 17-year-old, God bless you. But that's not how it normally happens. They should be able to find some food if nothing's being prepared. They should be able to get dressed for school. They should be able to be ready at a time that you have told them they should be ready. This is something that they need to start to be able to do. Okay? Some mornings my children are incredibly successful at this. Other mornings I'm singing that With or Without You song. They need to have some control of their time after school. Are they going to play a sport? Are they going to be involved in other extracurricular activities? Are they going to have a job? And if they are, they have some freedom to do that at certain age levels, but they still have to get their homework done. They still have to make sure they have clothing to wear the next day so that the next morning is not a crisis. They still have to make sure their teeth are brushed and that they get to bed at the time that you appointed for them. They have some freedom there. They need the opportunity to manage that time. And there should be expectations from you as a parent that you control this time. Because I'm not going to be there to wake you up and put you to bed at a reasonable time. You're going to take that all on your own in a few years. Let's manage the time that you have now. While I can help you, while I can encourage you, while I can hold you accountable. You should learn to control your attitude. As a teenage child, attitudes become, a big thing. It's one thing to do what your parents say. It's another thing to do what your parents say with a good attitude. The biggest challenge I as a parent have is that my kids are incredibly nice. They're nice to the people they go to school with. They're nice to the adults that are in their lives. They're nice to people here at church. But they don't think that applies to one another. Like, the sibling conflicts are real. They would never say some of the things that they say to each other to any one of you, and I'm thankful for that, because then you would really know. And one of those things, their attitude towards one another, it becomes a challenging thing. My attitude towards them when this happens becomes a challenge for me. Because I want to get down in the mud with them and start, throwing sarcastic, and, it becomes one of the greatest challenges. Proverbs 16:32 addresses this, and it says this: patience is better than power, and controlling one's temper than capturing a city. At some point in the conversation, when two are at war with each other, I say this: you are not responsible for what your sibling did. You are responsible for what you did and how you reacted to what they did. You have to take control of your attitude. Finally, I want to leave you with this one thought. Teens, to the degree you control yourself, we do not have to control you. To the degree you control your time, to the degree you control your attitude, to the degree you control the privileges and responsibilities that you have, we do not have to control you. Finally, you should learn to control your impulses. We all have impulses. that immediate urge to buy something, that immediate urge to say something, that immediate urge to do something that would get us accepted and popular. And we have to learn to control those impulses. At one point in my life, in the lives of my children, I gave one of my children a smartphone, and at that point, at the time, there was some social media networks that I did not really want them to be on. And so I said about this one specific social media platform, you are not allowed to be on this. This is your smartphone. It is a privilege. You are not allowed to be on this. We had that conversation, and they did great. Okay, 4 or 5 months later, I'm at school. A parent of another student comes to me and says, "I just want to show you kind of some of the things that are going on this social media platform because my kid's involved too." And I'm like, "My kid's not on that." And she's like, "Really? Look at this." And at that point, I realized that my kid was on that. They had, because everybody else in their peer group had that particular social media platform, they had seen the need as well, and they would actually install and uninstall the app so that if I looked at the phone, I wouldn't know. That impulse, the fact that I can act and there won't be immediate consequences, negative consequences to me, has to be something that is controlled. And self-restraint will allow you to do that. I want to leave us all with one verse today. 2 Timothy 1:7 says this: "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity." Parents, you don't have to be afraid of your teenage children and of managing those teenage years. Teenagers, you don't have to be afraid of the tough choices and the yeses and the nos that you are going to encounter. The spirit that God has given us is of power and of love and self-discipline. Let's pray. This morning, I know I've talked about self-control a lot, and to be honest with you, there are people of all ages that struggle with self-control and self-restraint. And to be hypocritical and say I don't have any of those areas in my life is something I am unwilling to do. But today, I want you to know that God is your source of strength. He is your source of wisdom. He is the power to overcome those things where your control has not worked. And so today, to any age group in here, I would love to pray for those of you who know there is an area of my life where I lack self-restraint, where I do not have self-control. And so with all eyes closed, heads bowed, if you would just like for me to pray for you to conquer an area of self-control through God's power and strength in your life, if you would just lift your hands, and I'm lifting mine as well. Father, today you look down on us, and God, you made us perfectly, but we have this sin nature, and God, we are without you powerless against some of the impulses, some of the things that we want to control in our lives. And so, Father, we ask for your help. We admit to being broken people. We confess those things that we do not have control of, because through your Spirit, through your power, and through your strength, we can have victory in our lives. God, help us to dive into your word and find the truths that will help us. Today, I want to pray for teens. God, before this group, God, I know there are some teens here, and they are struggling in areas of self-control. And some of the things that we talked about that seem so small, yet they're so big, or things that are so big, yet they've been made so small by the people around us. God, I pray that our teens would have the self-restraint to know what is real, to get into your word, Father, and find truth and cling to it, even when everything else tells us that it's wrong or that we should go another way. And God, for the parents in this room, God, as a parent, so many times we're racked by the guilt of areas where we have failed. Father, today is a day of new mercy, new strength. And so I claim that over each parent in this room. Father, yesterday's attempts to parent our children that have not worked, God, I pray that we would forget about those. God, those things that have worked, where we've been faithful and we've provided guidance, God, help us to follow up on those and continue in those. But most of all, Father, help each of us as parents to draw closer to you, because in that relationship, we will have the wisdom of Solomon, the wisdom of David, to raise our children in a way that they have self-control. Father, I pray that you would be with each person in this room. God, it's not an easy message to talk about. It's not an easy message to apply. But God, give us wisdom and strength that only you can provide. And we pray all these things in your name.